Nicole.
I'm Rolando.
And I'm Eddie Z.
And this is Remakes, Reboots, and Revivals.
An original podcast
about unoriginality.
And this is episode 3 of our Nosferatu series. Today, what we usually do after we talk about the original and its new property is that we're going to do a little fun lightning round.
Lightning round.
Because this is a 102-year-old film that we're comparing to the new property, you know, things are going to probably look a little bit differently than they do. We're going to start off with some special categories before we get into the acting and then finally overall our thoughts. So first up is let's talk about set design and costumes. Okay. Which sets and costumes did we prefer, the 1922 or did we prefer the 2024?
So question number one I have is like the way they were dressed in the 1922 film, was that how they were dressing in 1922 or was that supposed to be like a period piece?
Yes, it was a period piece. It was in 1838.
Okay, is that when they were trying to like emulate the style?
Yes, it was 1922 doing an 1838 film. Yes.
Got it. Okay, that wasn't one. I part of me was just like, is this just how they dressed in 1922? I can't tell. This
think that was in
a
title card early in the film.
No, I know that. But I just meant like, you know how like some films back in the days would just be like, this is 1922, but like it's really just like what we're wearing nowadays, just ever so slightly like just changed.
Okay.
So anyway, because of that, I wasn't sure if this was what's happening in this film. So. In terms of costume design, my costume design of choice would be the 2024 version of costumes. I think they were just like the movie just looked good, and as a result, I think that works for me. As did the set design, right? Where I think the set design for the 1922 film was just too pretty. It was too clean. It was too sterile at times. Where I think, yeah, and I think the 2024 just looks so much creepier.
Yeah. It's like, let's throw more rats and decaying bodies here. Yeah,
like the castle design was just way cooler, and that's like they had a small budget for the 1922 films. So that's not fair, but still.
Do you know the budget for the 1922?
I don't know. I just know that it was a small budget. Is what my research showed.
It must be a small budget, Nicole. Come on, it must be a small budget.
Okay, so for me, it's half and half. I do think that the costumes they had more characters, they had more to do, and they're really harking back to a time far, beyond. So I'm going to go with the 2024 for the costumes. But I'm going to go with the 1922 for the set design because, again, this is the template here. I'm not going to go with the 2024 because the 2024 wouldn't exist without the 1922. That set the fucking standard right there, baby.
Oh, okay.
And so I'm going to go with the thing that pretty much everything else has done an iteration or an imitation of. Mm-hmm. It was freaking definitive. Even Todd Browning's Dracula in 1931 harkened to this set design. It was fucking iconic. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I'm going with 1922's, which is... given to Albin Grau. So I think, Albin, way to kill it, bro.
I just want to comment, though, on the 2024 was, what's the main character? Ellen, right?
Ellen, yeah.
The bonnet that she wore, that really large kind of bonnet that kind of framed her whole face, that was black. There was scenes where it gave the sense of that it was like a black halo on her. So and they did the shots too. They were just like perfect. They just framed that perfectly, and it did add to this her being kind of like this dark supernatural person. So William Dafoe's his coat, the coat that he wore, I was just like, where can I get that coat?
Yeah, I do.
It's so great.
And no, I don't have an exact number for the budget. All we know is that it was, according to the director, a low budget film made for German audiences.
All right, so now let's talk about cinematography. Do we give it to Fritz Arno Wagner for 1922's Nosferatu, or do we give it to Jarin Blaschke? I hope I'm saying his name right, for 2024.
I'm going to go with the 1922 movie for cinematography, even though it was overlit, right, and too bright at times. I do think the the use of shadow, come on, it's so iconic. That has stood the test of time, right? Like you've seen it in music videos, you've seen it copied and stuff. It's just beautiful. A lot of that outside of like his performance, sure, but like it's that shadow up against the wall that kind of makes it so iconic, I would say.
Absolutely, yeah. Cinematography is absolutely going to go to Fritz Arno Wagner. This was an expressionist film. I'm a big fan of the expressionist movement, which I feel like a lot of people sometimes don't get what expressionism is. So, expressionism is supposed to convey how a person's feeling internally, but on the outside. So, it's not supposed to be like, oh, the world physically looks like this. Like, no, that's how it feels for these people. And so that's why there's also this divide in the 1922 film, because before Orlok infiltrates, kind of like, your typical invader film would go, which also, let's talk about the fact that this film also has immigration, scares as part of its narration, or as
Hmm.
part of its theme. But before he comes, everything is wonderful and beautiful. And then when he comes, it's also dark, and it's also lingering in the unknown. And it's conveying exactly how these people feel about, this force that has entered, and this plague that has entered into their lives.
I know that this movie is considered German expressionism, but like I remember seeing examples of German,
Expressionism, yeah.
and it doesn't. I feel like this is like the lesser version of German expressionism.
Well,
Obviously,
but that's the thing.
like when we think about like the cabinet of Doctor Calligraphy or something, uh,
Caligari.
that one. Like, come on. I mean, you compare that to this, it's just like this is kind of.
Well, yeah, but that's also like going, 100 on the scale. Like, this is a little bit more subtler. And again, it's
Mm,
not supposed to be this lavish, it depends on what the emotion is. It's
mm,
supposed to be a representation of an internal feeling that you get to see, outside. It's kind of like
okay,
if you were to put on the glasses of a depressed person, how would it look? That would be more expressionist.
I
Um,
see. Okay,
and
okay.
also, this cinematographer, they defined horror films with this,
Yes,
essentially.
that's
And we
also true.
kind of
I
owe so
agree.
too much to it. So you kind of have to tip your hat to them. So
Mhm.
1922 wins for me.
I would agree. 1922 for me. Eddie, do you have a preference? Like you've seen these two films.
I would actually go with the 1922
Interesting.
film.
Wow.
Yeah,
1922 one
uh,
cinematography, clean sweep.
and no, because I feel like, well, this is just my field. Like you guys are gonna you're gonna have more because it's your field, right? So you see more, you're able to compare more. You have history. So what it's more like what I feel. So while the 2024 had this kind of uh claustrophobicness,
Mm-hmm.
the first one, because everything seemed so large,
Mm-hmm.
like all the scenes, like him running in the courtyard and the castle, that gave you the sense you couldn't hold on to anything. Like you were always like in these large spaces, but had no like grounds. Like you couldn't hold on. There's nothing to hold on to.
Hmm.
Everything seems so far, right, or locked. So I
Yeah.
like that flip side of the claustrophobic feeling.
Yeah, and that is true. I would agree with you on that one, right? Like the filmmaking techniques used for the 1922 film does make the castle even film a little bigger than the castle that we experienced in the 2024, which I just happen to like the claustrophobia of the 2024 version. However, as Nicole pointed out, you also do have to respect the fact that just like, yeah, a lot of our horror tropes do come from like this film.
Yeah,
And so yeah, there's a reason why.
Respect.
give
Yeah.
Respect where it is
homage.
due. Well, let's talk before we move into performances about creature design. Creature design
Mm.
of Orlok in the two films. Do we like Max Schreck's embodiment and the way he looks as this rat like vampire? Or do we like the design that they gave to Bill Skarsgård for the 2024? What do we think, Rolando?
I actually do like the Bill Skarsgård version. I think it was creepy enough, but come on, the original. I did miss the original look. Like, come on, like that original look is just so. But I guess maybe there's a reason why you just can't replicate it because it would be not silly, but like it would just seem like an imitation.
Mm,
Again, we know even if you've never seen the film, you know what this version of not of Count Orlok looks like the Nosferatu film. Like it's like kind of ingrained in like our pop culture like memories forever, right?
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. I'm for that reason too. I would have to pick Max Schreck. Just freaking again. truly horrifying. If you were to just turn this on in the middle of the night, especially think back to not seeing any images of it in pop culture and just turning it on, seeing it. It reminds me of like this Twilight Zone episode I watched when I was way too young at like 1 a.m. and I woke up, the TV was on. It was The Howling Man, where he lets the devil loose and the man slowly turns into the devil with a technique that is really easy to achieve now cinematically. But as a kid, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
This is the stuff that nightmares are made out of when you kind of have no impression of what it is. So, yeah, he nailed it.
I like this childhood image of you waking up in the middle of the night. The TV happens to be on. Nobody's up. It's on, and then all of a sudden you fall into like watching this Twilight episode that scarred you for the rest of your life.
Happened more times than you know. What about you, creature design wise?
Oh no, the first one. I think the original, and it is because it's iconic, and it is because it has left an impression. Even though I've never seen this this the silent film until recently, I know this image, and I know that even though it can be interpreted as very kind of like goofy or funny. This is the origin, a source of how other things are going to look moving forward for what we conceive as horrific.
All right, so let's talk now about performances. Let's start with Thomas Hutter or Hooter. Let's go with Hutter. Do we like Gustav von Weigenheim or Nicholas Hoult?
All right, I'm gonna go with Nicholas Hoult because the 1922 version was too twinkish for my liking, which is interesting because like Nicholas Hoult is, I'm pretty sure, like a twink also, right? Like he's just a tall blonde guy. I assume
he's
hairless.
Not blonde, and I don't think he's a twink.
He's not blonde.
No,
he's not
just
blonde.
Like stark hair.
Oh well, he. I feel like he fits more so the mold of twink than whatever. But I'm just saying. I didn't like the 1922 guy was, and I get it. It's a silent film. You have to like be more expressionistic with how you move. But he just moved too. He moved too fancily for my liking. He looked like someone who would not be marrying a woman, if you know what I mean.
Ooh, okay. Maybe that's why I'm going to go with good old Gustav. As my significant other pointed out, he's totally oblivious. He's just like, wow, there's a lot of mosquitoes out here. I got two right next to each other on my chest. He's just kind of like has no idea what he's in store for. And it does add this sort of comic, at least from a 2024 perspective, comic aspect to it.
He did seem like a comic relief, most certainly. I agree.
Yeah. I think that maybe he wasn't perceived that way in 1922, but I got to give my chops because nobody else will. I really enjoyed Nicholas Hoult in this movie, but I'm gonna give it old Gustav there. What about you, Eddie?
I'm gonna give it to Holt, but the first guy, he was just it was hysterical. It was very comical. And you know, a lot of it has to do with you have to give the expression of every feeling because you can't speak. But there was a point where he just like he looked at the book for the second time when he was about to wash up, and he like read the passage again, and then he just like he just threw it on the floor.
Yeah.
You know how I am with books. I'm not throw books on the floor. What are you?
Gotta show our love to this guy at the end of the day. All right, so now it leaves us to Ellen Hutter. Do we like Greta Schroeder or Lily Rose Depp?
I'm gonna go with Lily Rose Depp.
On
this one, just because this character gets fleshed out more. You do get a sense it's more of a backstory, and there is this build up. Looking at her experiences, her fits and mania, and recognizing that it's this whole supernatural like attacks that she's experiencing, and then even William Dafoe's character saying, at the end of the day, you're kind of the key to all this. This is all on you, really. Those guys over there, they're all probably gonna die, so it's up to you. But you do what you want, and basically with a smile and a twinkle in his eye, he kind of walks away and lets her kind of make this decision for herself, And
I'll be over here, whatever you decide.
Yeah, it's like that.
All right.
I'm gonna go with Lily Rose Depp. Her performance was way more like her character was more fleshed out. I did like her performance, and I think she just I don't know. I thought she was good. I liked her a lot. And the Ellen of the original film, I don't know. She just wasn't giving anything, and I just didn't feel anything from her
Yeah.
either.
She's very quiet.
Yeah, I
She's
mean,
very
yeah,
quiet
but
character.
also like I don't know why. Like her sacrifice just didn't like hit the same.
Same, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't as crucial to the story as it was for Ellen, and it's a
Hmm.
little unfair for us to compare in this way because
It is.
Lily Rose Depp has way more to do.
Yeah.
Yes.
No. In all of this, I think it's really kind of unfair. In that
You
sense.
think it's
Yeah.
unfair to compare a film from 100 years ago to today? You don't think that? I think that's the most fair. I think that's how we should be comparing all media.
So,
Exactly. Thank you, Orlando. um, Having said that, though, it's simply because of the fact that they realized that the heart of the story lies in Ellen and makes that ending hit a bit more. Um, Her performance didn't always hit for me and didn't always work for me, but it's true. And she gave it her all. So let's give it to Lily Rose Depp for Ellen Hutter across the board clean sweep. Will Count Orlok be a clean sweep? Ooh, I wonder, Rolando, who do you pick?
I'm gonna go. Okay, we talked about the design and how important it is, right? Great costume design, and a lot of that also lends itself to the body, how the actor Max Schreck like contorted his body for certain scenes and stuff. With that said, the voice performance of Bill Skarsgård, because that was his actual voice, that was him actually doing his own voice work, was so good and so scary and terrifying. And the way he just able to kind of just like I don't know embody darkness just in voice acting alone was enough for me. I didn't love the design for Count Orlok in the new one, but because of how just how much impending doom there was in his like the way he carried himself, I'm gonna go with Bill Skarsgård's performance.
Technically unfair because we never hear the voice of Max Shrek,
No, you're right. You're
but
right. But hang on. But like I but Max Shrek is going by the visuals, and visually I think he's a better performance, like visually, right? But because I'm able to excuse how I don't like the visual the not that I don't like, but I don't appreciate as much the new visual design, right? Is
yeah,
overpowered by the voice work, right? So it's just like even though one didn't have voice and is great in visually and his physical performance, the other one while lacking in the physical performance, the voice just sold it, and I feel like
yeah.
they kind of balanced out in that sense.
Okay. For those reasons, if you were to turn the volume off completely on the Robert Eggers version, and the film should be able to stand on its own visually because it is a
Okay,
visual medium, and you were to compare the two,
I
Max
would.
Shrek, I think, would come out on top.
I kind of would disagree only because again, every time we did see the performance of Bill Skarsgård on camera as Count Orlok, he was much more menacing. He was much more terrifying than the iconic design that we know. So the better creature design in the original film, but that does not necessarily mean it was the better performance. I think the better performance did come from Bill Skarsgård. Like when he is in that room with Lily Rose Depp, and like it's both sexual. There's so much sexual tension between the two, and it just turns into straight up almost like a domestic violence situation.
Mm.
So quickly, like that was much more terrifying to me than anything I think Max Shrek could have done.
To me, Max Shrek looks like vermin. He looks like a rat. He
But
looks
that's
inhumane for me, which is why, for me, sir, my
oh,
pick is
oh.
Max Shrek. Uh, I I don't disagree with you, but I also think that what you're talking about might become something we might consider when we talk about the direction of the films. I think that the embodiment of the commitment to living from head to toe in this vampire character is Max Shrek. And that's it for me. So, what about you,
Mm.
Eddie?
because I agree with Rolando, but I agree with the same reason, like the presence of the voice and the the profile of the shadow more was what was creepier for me than the original. But the original does embody the what it is all about: the plague and the vermin and the
Yeah.
pestilence that falls upon everyone. So I'm a little like,
Pick one.
I'll go with the first one.
Wow,
Let me go with got the
I've been
first one.
outnumbered. All
I
right.
got the first
All right. Whatever. Y'all are wrong.
Yeah,
In my
no, our
opinion.
opinions are totally
No, it's funny because while I love the new movie very much so compared to the silent fic does has these things that I can really appreciate and really like. Now, like, it's one of those things too. Like I always say, like, you watch it and you like you recognize this historical importance when we talk about the history of film,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
and then you look at, oh yeah, you got to have this,
To
before you
get
can
to
have
this.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Which then now leads us to one of the more important aspects, which is the directing. You know, who wins best direction? Does it go to F.W. Murnau for his direction of the 1922 film, or does it go to Robert Eggers for his direction of the 2024 film? Let me be the obvious choice here and go with F.W. Murnau
Mm.
because this new Robert Eggers' direction style might not even exist if it weren't for F.W. Murnau. And also things that he invented not only in this film, but in The Last Laugh, in Sunrise, other films. Um, I know other films are not taking place here, but I'm familiar with his directing style, and he added so much to language that is so important. I love the compositions of Nosferatu. I know you don't like the light, but I like the framing. I like the mise en scène. I like the way that the story flows. I think that overall, if you put all of the aspects together and, that was all decided and dictated by this man, I think that he was the most successful at doing that. And it's hard because I do think that if maybe we were just talking about Robert Eggers alone, I would give it to him. But Robert Eggers would not exist without F.W. Murnau at this point. So how can I give it to Robert Eggers is my standing.
Yeah.
Now let me hear it, Rolando. What
I'm
do
gonna
you
go with I'm going with Robert Eggers, and I
Yeah.
think when you talk about the mise en scène, when you talk about sound design, when you're talking about story flow and stuff, I mean Robert Eggers just like he took it and he kind of like I'm not gonna say he perfected it, but he definitely took it and he decided it's just like this is how I'm going to do to improve upon what was the original, right? And I'm not saying improve it because like it needed improvement, right? The original one has obviously stood the test of time, but improved it for a modern audience, for a new
Mm.
sense of modern audience. It's just, let's be real, that's me. Like I'm not into like old films and stuff, right? Like so like this movie is clearly made for me, someone who is like, no, I want to see like modern movies with like modern sensibilities and stuff that talk to me about my time and stuff, right?
So interesting. Yeah, because interestingly enough, I think that the 1922 film speaks closer to their time and that contemporary audience than this new film talks to our time. So I find it interesting that you're like, I want to see a film that talks to our time because I don't think
But
this
it's
film does that.
I don't think maybe not necessarily talk about our times and stuff, right? Because you're right. I think you could have more with the plague, especially post pandemic. But I was talking more about the sense of just like with I guess our cultural lens and stuff.
Yeah, that's
So
interesting. I consider myself that way, but I like films that do that for their era. So like I like 1950s times that talk about 1950s films. I like 1930s
mm,
films that talk about like I like films that do that now. I respond more to 2024 films set in 2024 than period piece films. You know what I mean?
I guess I tend to prefer movies that are set in their contemporaries. Like just because it's like the original and like I think even Robert Eggers has admitted that like without the Nosferatu film, there would not be like probably his career in general.
Mm,
That does not necessarily mean that it is still the better film. I think the original one, while
the
it
better
is the original,
direction.
a better direct. I'm sorry, you're right, better direction. The better directed film. I think and I think part of that might also be because Robert Eggers has such a reverence for this property that like
Hmm.
kind of why it's he was able to treat it with like he did treat it with a lot of respect.
You did?
He did not like just let it like it didn't fall on deft hands, and I don't know, it shows and stuff.
Okay. And I completely get this point of view. So Eddie, where do you stand on this?
Tiebreaker.
I think I'm gonna skip this one. I'll leave this neutral.
What?
Why?
Chaotic neutral.
Yeah, because I can be totally honest and say I don't have the background to be able
Mm,
to do a really academic comparison and appreciate this and that. I can only say like, oh yeah, I like I like the newer stuff,
mm-hmm.
or I'm not into period pieces, but give me a sci-fi anytime. So if this director does an aliens film,
Robert Eggers in space.
yeah, I would be all about that.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Epic creepy space horror. I would love it. So yeah, I think I'm kind of neutral. I can
Okay.
That's fair. That's fair.
take
Well,
it.
you can't be neutral for the very last one because this is where it always ends with us, which is between the 1922 film Nosferatu and the 2024 film Nosferatu.
Mhm.
What wins Best Picture?
I'm gonna go with, for me, the new film.
Yes.
Just because, again, just it has sound. I'm not reading. I think
uh,
no, we gave Ellen like an actual beginning, middle, and end.
William Dafoe was in
William
this.
Dafoe's yeah, like just performances overall, like
Oh
it was
my
like
god.
again, respect to the original, but I'm a modern guy. I want something that's just like I need to like also hear my characters.
Okay. Eddie, what about you?
No, I'm gonna go also with 2024.
Okay.
I really and for the same reasons, and not per se I need to hear my characters, but I do enjoy hearing my characters. But I think really like the performance, and William Dafoe really he won me over.
Yeah. I think that at the end of the day, when it comes to this too, it's what you want from a movie. And I know
Yeah.
that Rolando and I tend to disagree on what makes, what's the most vital aspect of a film.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I'm the type of person who just atmosphere and tone and, the mood that you create is the thing that's always going to last with me.
Mm-hmm.
I might see a film with good performances and a good story, and then I'll forget it in a week, but I'll see something that just kind of, who cares about the story? The tone of it and the atmosphere that they've created and the visual medium that they painted onto the film will stay with me for the rest of my life. And I'll never forget Nosferatu. I'll never forget the original 1922 film. What he established with cinematic language and also just the mood that he created and the sense of the horror. He called it a symphony of horror, by the way, because in 1922, films were thought of like how video games are thought of now. It's like, it's for the masses, it's not art. And Murnau approached it as art, and he wanted people to recognize that cinema was an emerging art form. And he treated it with just, again, the fact that he treated it like a painting and the fact that the aura around this film you can still feel 102 years later is, to me, what cinema is all about. And so I just feel, out of respect more than anything, in terms of what I like out of a film, I can't in good faith not choose the 1922 Nosferatu. I like the 2024 film and I think it's very good.
Mm-hmm.
But again, what I want from a film too is what was established and mastered in the 1922 film. So that is it for me. And I also don't mind no sound. So I like things for what they are, not for what I need them to be. So no shade though, Rolando.
It did sound a little bit like shade, It sounded like you were coming for me on that one. But how about this? Let's throw it to our audience. Which do they prefer? Have you even seen the original 1922 Nosferatu? Let us know in the comments.
Absolutely.
Do you agree with me, Nicole, or are you gonna sit out like Eddie and just be like, they're both good, let's respect everything?
No, not sitting out. Okay.
And be sure to tune into our next episode. It's kind of going to be a spin-off of this topic before we move on to our next media property. So thank you for watching our series on Nosferatu. Thank you for listening. And until next time,
stay unoriginal.